From one gamer to another, you are one, right? Here are the video games I played in the first third of 2026. Yeah, I got Metal Gear Solid Delta, and I feel a little guilty about it. I mean, how many damn times do I need to buy this game? This probably is the best way to play it though, not just for the graphics, but for the play control. It's similar to the Phantom Pains, but with some features taken out. The trigger buttons are used to aim and shoot, as they were always intended in shooters. You can also crouch walk, which softens your footsteps and keep your camo rating up as you move around quickly. You still need to manually change your camouflage, but here you can use the quick menu instead of going into the pause menu. Super convenient. The characters look more real, but there's still this plastic doll quality to them. But I can't complain too much about that, because these character models don't have that dead-eyed, staring into space look in the Mass Effect games. When I first played this, the cutscenes were as choppy as hell. It's like a sushi chef got his mitts on the frame rate. But then a patch came out that fixed the frame rate by a good deal. The patch was only 26 gigs, bringing the total file size to just over 100. Well, whatever works. There's also online multiplayer if that's your thing. Plus, Snake vs. Monkey. If that's not the title of a porno somewhere out there, I'll be very surprised. This minigame isn't really my thing, but I gotta say the new playstyle makes it less aggravating. I've heard the opinion that Metal Gear Solid 3, or Delta or whatever, is a great jumping on point for people new to the series. While I can see why, I still recommend that new players check out the games in order of release. This game may be a prequel, but there are still references to the previous games, and even inside jokes that'll fly over your head if you're not experienced. Metal Gear Solid 2 in particular has to have one of the most insane stories in all of gaming. Not because it makes no sense, but because very serious people in this story sound cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It has to be experienced to be believed. Next is Castlevania, Order of Ecclesia. I was on the fence about getting the Dominus collection, but while playing Symphony of the Night, I went ahead and got it. Of these three games, Order of Ecclesia was the only one I hadn't played on DS, but I had heard how tough it was, and they weren't lying. I'd also put in a few hours into Dawn of Sorrow, so I could tell the difference in difficulty right away. It seems the developers weren't messing around with this one, as enemy placement and movement patterns make it hard to avoid damage. Even a boss fight like this giant enemy crab is tricky because the safe zone isn't safe for very long. Later boss fights are agonizingly tough. You'll need lightning-fast reflexes to predict their next moves. Or, as I learned a little too late, you can exploit elemental weaknesses. In this game, rather than weapons you can find and sell, your character, Shinoa, picks up glyphs, which are basically your weapons. There are bladed weapons, but also elemental spells, and when you combine them, you get a powerful elemental attack, which can make a big difference in tough encounters. Shinoa retrieves glyphs by lifting her hair to reveal the glyph on her back. Previous games had you pick up enemy essences automatically, but this game does it different because, well, you know. There are a few good experience farming spots, such as this Frankenstein's monster early on. He shoots lightning, of course. Plus, he has a freaking flamethrower. Tragic figure my ass. There's also this floating head that's all muscle and sinew. Ew. Plus the Tin Man. You know what? Forget the Tin Man. Rather than explore one big map, you get an entire region made up of fairly small maps, with a village as the hub. You have to find and rescue all the villagers, or guess what? You'll eventually get a bad ending. And there's Dracula's castle, of course, which has this gruesome bony entrance hall, and a library full of books. So many books. I think Dracula deserves an atomic wedgie for how much of a book nerd he is. The castle looks enormous, but I could explore most of it in just a few hours. So that's Castlevania, Order of Ecclesia. I'm glad I waited for this to hit home consoles, because playing this with the proper controller is preferable to getting cramped hands with the handheld machine. While waiting for the next game, I went and finished Dawn of Sorrow. It's easier than Order of Ecclesia, but it ain't a cakewalk either. So I defeated this chump named Dario, mostly using my, guardian angel, and that triggered one of the game's false endings. I technically beat the game, but I didn't really. What I really had to do was take down these walls using the corresponding enemy essences, and then I had to beat this giant jerkwad and gain his ability to enter mirrors. I went back to Dario and entered the mirror behind him, and a fresh new hell awaited. This giant devil hits pretty hard. The trick is to wait till he does attacks that are easy to avoid, and strike when you have a chance. I eventually made my way through the game to this piece of flesh, which could be a tongue or something even more disgusting. I finished it well enough and... oh shit. This giant abomination wouldn't be so tough if it wasn't for these Langolier-looking bastards, which hit hard and have too many hit points, an abundance of health restoratives, a new high jump ability, and my guardian angel were instrumental in this fight. Finally, at long last, we have Metroid Prime 4. There was a time when the Big N looked at CD-ROMs and was like, nah. They wanted to make games that were fun to play, not games that you watch like movies. In subsequent years, the company softened its stance. They did publish the Xenoblade games after all, but for the most part their first-party titles put gameplay first ahead of cinematics. Breath of the Wild was their most cinematic game in years, and while that worked out pretty well for the Zelda series, the Metroid Prime series had never seemed to be begging for more cinema scenes. And yet here we are. Metroid Prime 4 has finally arrived, and it seemed designed to center around a cinematic story rather than classic labyrinths. Not that the cinematics are terribly long, mind you, but judging by their quality, much of the production's focus was clearly on them. So stop me if you heard this one. Samus Aran finds herself on a remote planet where she explores the remains of a lost civilization. The psychic remains of the old race gives her psychic powers, which is significant because Samus normally pulls the trigger and makes things go boom. But now she can bend spoons and see the future in crystal balls. But whatever they're called, her new powers are pretty much the same ones she's had in previous games, so I don't know what's so special about them this time. There is one new trick called the control shot, where I could steer the shot while time has slowed down.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
I soon met the first of several NPCs who would chatter in my ear. Mackenzie, who looks like he'd be in the running to play as Tingle in the upcoming Zelda movie. There were shenanigans, and then he became my radio buddy. Oh joy. Later in this place called the Volt Forge, I retrieved the map, and then Mackenzie chimed in and told me something I could have figured out on my own. Hell, this is something I did figure out with no voiceovers in previous games. Was this radio buddy really necessary? Here's a pro tip, don't underestimate these skinny robots. Their weapons hit pretty damn hard. The Volt Forge is the place where I got my motorbike, the Viola. And unfortunately, I got a new hot rod suit. Look what they did to my boy. Or girl, whatever. I could then take the bike out into the desert, and yep, this is the desert. It's vast and has few points of interest. And you know what? I'm glad Nintendo didn't put in music. That way I can put on YouTube videos as background noise. Thanks, Nintendo. But really, this desert reminds me of sailing the ocean in Wind Waker, one of my least favorite things to do in a Zelda game. The levels are located in the far corners of the desert. Sometimes I found an element chip, and guess what? I had to ride all the way back to base so Matt could install it into my arm cannon. The developers really wanted me to ride through this desert as much as possible. There are other NPCs and they're fine. 2 of them could have stepped out from a Halo game, while the other 2 are definitely JRPG characters. A handful of times I had to escort them through battle, and when one of them got low on health, it was up to me to restore them. If I took too long to do that, it would be game over. It can be pretty annoying, especially when the enemies hit hard and I had only so much health myself. Otherwise, the NPCs are fine, although I think a few lines of dialogue should have been written better. Perhaps my biggest problem with the game is that it may look non-linear on the surface, but it feels linear. These levels aren't as maze-like as in previous games, and the developers' need for a rigid story structure may have played a part in that. Metroid Prime 3 also had cinematics, but they were few in number and didn't get in the way of gameplay and level design. So what are some good things about Metroid Prime 4? The soundtrack is pretty damn good. I especially like the rock guitar and dark synth. The enemies are more aggressive than in previous games. Right off the bat, there are plants that shoot thorns and slam into you. The bosses are some of the best in the series. They're tough, but it's fun to figure them out and finally take them down. I sometimes found it best to lock into the main body, then use the accelerometer to aim with the reticule. It can feel a little awkward, but it works. The game on Switch, should I start calling it Switch 1? It looks really good, but I can see how it can look better in 4K with HDR. The lighting effects were clearly designed for HDR, but on Switch 1 they feel flat. After a while though, I stopped caring because the game was definitely optimized for Switch 1. It runs at a constant 60 FPS, making for a smoother experience than I'd anticipated. Now, this may be spoilery, but the story doesn't continue any plot points from previous Metroid Prime games. There's no Phazon and no Dark Samus. I guess those things have run their course. And there aren't any free-roaming Metroids. According to the story, the Metroids are stuck inside the bosses, controlling their minds. I guess the Metroids themselves have run their course. And that sucks. Would have been cool to see some late-stage Metroids. Maybe even a queen. In conclusion, the game isn't a train wreck, but I wish I had more closely followed the traditional Metroid Prime formula of challenging exploration rather than streamlining it. Samus's latest offering could have been done better, but please, don't call her Master Cheeks. That's the other guy.
Hang on! I'm punching it! Brace for impact!
Well, they're dead. D-E-D, dead. Maybe Samus is okay, but the other two? There's no way in hell. Of course they're fine. What the hell was I thinking?
My, aren't you looking fine? Tell you what, I'm gonna turn around at the count of 3. Someone around here is gonna get totally naked. 1, 2, 3. Who the hell are you? Your worst nightmare.
Next is The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Yeah, the title screen has no music, and you thought the Silent Desert was weird. This is it, the first Legend of Zelda game where you actually play as Zelda. Yes, the first game where you play as Zelda. So why doesn't this game feel like a bigger deal than what it should be? It could be because the game doesn't have you play as a blue-eyed beauty in a highly detailed world. Instead, you're more like a small toy in a giant plastic playset, which is fine in terms of gameplay, but the visual aesthetics leave me wanting more. It's just Masahiro Mori's uncanny valley theory at work here. The more human or lifelike an automaton is, the greater the emotional response and bond it elicits. Context is also key. Imagine Master Chief in a chibi style like these Federation Force soldiers. Would Halo still seem like a badass game? In this case, Zelda and the other characters are not realistically proportioned, so my emotional attachment is limited. I honestly think this game was a missed opportunity to give Zelda a truly epic adventure that would have had fans talking for a long time to come. Something like the Atelier Ryza games, but with that Nintendo touch, don't you think? Anyway, the game begins like how most Zelda games end, with Link rescuing the princess from Smurfy Porkins. The king is overjoyed at seeing his daughter alive and safe, and his general makes funny noises. But the honeymoon's over when the king sends Zelda to jail and sentences her to death. It seems that purple rifts are spreading through the land, and the princess is being blamed for them. Fortunately, she has the help of this magical floating booger, who joins her in saving the kingdom. But the big question is, where does this game fit in the official Zelda timeline?
Who knows? Who cares?
Since you're not playing as a seasoned warrior, the developers reason that you should battle using magic. And in this case, it's like playing Scribblenauts. You know, that game where you can write something, anything, and it appears out of thin air to help you. But in this game, your palette is limited to objects, devices, and creatures that you copy into memory. Instead of swinging a sword or your rod, you conjure these clones called echoes to fight for you. It's a system that really works, as long as you create the right echoes for the job. Many echoes are borderline useless, while others are absolutely vital. And then there are those in between that players can test out to suit their playstyle. And there are OP'd ones like the Lionel, He's not one to tiptoe on eggshells as he swings his massive blade. That's cool and all, but just look at all these echoes. The sheer number of them is a little out of control. It's like the arrow attachments in Tears of the Kingdom, but maybe a little worse. The only saving grace is that you can tag your favorites and put them in their own menu. And since you're playing as royalty, you can go into people's houses and break their pottery. And there's nothing they can do about it. The world is pretty big, but thankfully not enormous. I had the option of riding a horse, but with so many fast travel points, I found no need for it. There are two kinds of labyrinths, dungeons and rifts. Rifts are like that funky end level in Pokemon Platinum. Don't ask me how I know that. Dungeons are your typical multi-layered Zelda levels, but without so many torch puzzles. Both are designed to test your versatility with echoes, so you'll need to pick the right ones to defeat enemies and navigate. Before you enter though, you should search the outer area. Look for new echoes to add to your growing list. Perhaps my biggest knock against the game is that the dungeons aren't as twisty as in Link's Awakening. I usually found them pretty straightforward. A few times in my journey, I encountered Dark Link, and all he wanted to do was stick a sword in me.
You're my kind of girl, princess. Kiss me.
No, you're already.
So are you.
After beating his ass, I stole his sword. I borrowed his sword, which enabled me to go into hero mode. I essentially turned into Link himself so I can battle the old-fashioned way, as long as I have energy. I next met Dark Link in the desert, where he shot arrows at me. I made fans that blew his arrows away, and then matched my fan. With his face!
Oh boy, smooching time. Oh.
And then he split into three, and my fans weren't very helpful. So I made moblins to clean things up.
I'll always be your friend.
Go to hell.
Dungeon bosses can be tricky to figure out how to beat them. Some echoes are more useful than others, but as long as you get the job done, what does it matter? To be honest, I was on the fence about getting this, but I'm glad I did. I wasn't sure if I liked the new battle mechanics, always creating monsters to fight for me, but I found that I had just as much fun playing this game as I did with Link's Awakening. Of course, Echoes of Wisdom is more like Breath of the Wild. What with cooking, horse riding, and monster camps, it has a much smaller scale while still feeling robust. Hopefully, the next game with a playable Zelda is more visually appealing. But for now, this gets an easy recommendation for Zelda loyalists. On a final note, as of this editing, we've gotten some curiously low-quality pictures from the set of the upcoming Legend of Zelda movie. The actors are fresh faces, which is fine with me since they look like the characters. It looks like Link has a hood instead of a floppy cap, which is also fine with me. I've always feared that some fashion choices in the games would not translate well into live action, so this is a welcome change. And that's not a green screen, they're filming on location, which is a good sign. I'm still skeptical about the movie being any good though. Fingers crossed.
I want you to scrub this castle from top to bottom, you hear me? What, just me? What about the castle guards? Can't they help?
The military? Surely we have soldiers who are used to scrubbing with toothbrushes. Isn't there any staff? Maids? Butlers? Anyone? It's just me here, isn't it? I'm the only one guarding the Triforce and all. The kingdom is flat broke, isn't it? 'Cause you don't tax for shit. We just wanted to make Hyrule great again. Oh my god.
And if you press down and A, I can do the duck walk. Pretty cool, huh? But you can compare me to other animals too, like parakeets. Is he always like this?
Pretty much, yeah. How can you put up with it? He may not look it, but he's fantastic in bed.
Indiana Jones, I'd say ropes. Why did it have to be ropes?
Speaking of YouTube poop, here is Arzette, the Jewel of Faramore. Not that the game itself is poop, it's simply inspired by some classic games that had provided material for YouTube poop. If this game existed in a vacuum, it would be very strange indeed, but as it is, it's a somewhat living tribute to those curious Zelda CDI games. Arzette means to capture the magic of those games while fixing the faulty design and awkward storytelling. The stages have pastel-drawn backgrounds where it's easy to tell where you're supposed to stand on, and your character is pretty quick and nimble. The enemy designs are inventive, and sometimes you wouldn't think they'd go down like wet tissue paper. Like, look at this bad boy. He looks ready to throw down and deliver some serious pain. And down he goes. And let's not forget the cartoon cutscenes, where each frame looks like it was made in MS Paint. The animation quality isn't as fluid as in the Zelda games, but it gets the job done. The characters are wacky, and the comedy is tongue-in-cheek. Just like the Zelda games, but definitely intentional this time. Combat gets more difficult in the later game, but the real challenge is item hunting. You need sacred candles to progress, as well as special moves to reach those candles, such as the double jump. The double jump. How I went without that for so long. In short, this is a good weekend game for a decent price. It'll be sure to make you laugh, at the very least.
Oh, thank you for releasing me, dear. Allow me to heal you.
All right.
As a reward, how about some fairy dust?
No, thanks.
Oh, I insist. Enjoy!
Next is Baldur's Gate 3. I featured my character Shiva in a video last year. Well, this year I went ahead and finished her campaign. I first loaded an earlier save to undo my little tryst with Minthara, then fought her instead, which made me very happy. I then did some things differently from my first playthrough, such as making sure Will remained a human. Please forgive me for indulging in my curiosity. And I certainly got a different end result from my major decisions. Basically, I played nice and tried not to be such an evil bitch. Didn't always work, but hey. It took me around another 100 hours to finish, because I can't help but look in every corner for helpful items and experience points, and the memories of my first playthrough helped me stride forward with confidence. Not to mention the mods I installed. Huh? What's that backlog? Why am I ignoring you? Shut up! Get out of here! When I reached the lower city in Act 3, I was reminded of how precarious the situation would become, with several difficult choices to make. I also learned how unstable the game can be, with some save attempts actually failing. Every save file I can make seemed like something precious to hold on to. Anyway, it's too bad Dragon Age 4 didn't turn out more like Baldur's Gate 3, even though those Dragon Age games tend to be less complex and more cinematic. And from the look of things, I doubt BioWare will deliver a high fantasy RPG ever again, as Microsoft executives are cracking the whip to ensure the devs put out a sure thing.
Why don't we play a game? You win, I give you everything you desire. But you'll enjoy yourself more if you lose. It's a surprise. Off with your clothes.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Next is Silent Hill F. Huh? What's that? This isn't a freaking Silent Hill game. Okay, more for me then. On the surface, this looks like a radical departure for the series. It doesn't even take place in America. But this is an honest-to-God attempt at the kind of psychological horror that Silent Hill is known for. In the Western-made games, characters are loud and very talkative, and the melee combat is quick and button-mashy. But in the early games made in Japan, dialogue is minimal and soft, the better to instill dread with. And the combat is slower and methodical, sometimes to a fault. Silent Hill F returns to the days of yore, with momentum-based combat that requires good placement and timing. Instead of the wide-open streets of, well, Silent Hill, the Japanese village tends to have narrow paths that make it tricky to avoid enemies. Previous enemies were basically ugly people in costumes, but this game leans into body horror, throwing at you doll-like entities with twisted limbs. There's also a visual style with red flowers. Up close, they simply look like clusters of flowers. But the farther away you look, the more the flowers resemble bloody viscera, which they eventually become, quite literally. Like in any good survival horror game, combat is something you should occasionally avoid to conserve health and resources. In this case, you have breakable weapons, which can be repaired but only if you have toolkits. There are also a sanity meter and limited stamina, which you can increase but only by sacrificing precious items. The other world this time isn't old and decrepit, it's simply a dream world where you explore ancient Japanese architecture in the dead of night. The game has some of that maze-like design where you go around, look for key items, and figure out where to use them. But it feels scaled back from the Silent Hill 2 remake, since there aren't any large buildings with many rooms. Not necessarily a bad thing if you're not into that sort of thing. I remember when the game was first revealed, many commenters said it looked like Fatal Frame, and they didn't know what they were talking about. If this was a Fatal Frame title, our hero would have big old anime eyes, and she'd have a pretty dress with lace and ribbons and shit. Oh, and there'd be a camera and ghosts. Now you have Fatal Frame. And now for the big question. Is this game scary? For me personally, it's not that scary. There are some tense moments, but I never felt like dropping a load in my underwear, especially since the game doesn't have that truly unsettling score from Silent Hill 2. But that's because I'm an old fart who's seen it all. I've become desensitized to many horror themes. Your mileage may vary if you're still young and impressionable. I thought the story was pretty good though. I love a good fantasy tale, being a writer of them myself, and so from that perspective, I thought this game was satisfactory enough. It's very mysterious early on, and near the end it all becomes crystal clear. Just be sure to read the journal as it updates, as it gives crucial information. And remember, if this game traumatizes you, talk to someone you trust.
Someone like me.
Thank you for watching. With so many games listed, I decided to cut this video a little short. So this is the first third of 2026, part 1. Now let me tell you of a book I wrote well over a decade ago, The Legend of the Three Roses. Poor Callie. All she wanted to do was bump off the king, as a job for her clan. That's all. But when things go sideways, she improvises by kidnapping the nearest nobleman's son and trying to hold him for ransom. She needed the money to make up for her failure, you see. But then she heard about the Three Roses. She didn't know if it's a code name or literally 3 roses. All she knows is that the king wants them, so she has to find them first. It's a personal mission since it's all she has left. But even though fortune favors the bold, it hasn't been favoring her. If Callie doesn't get her act together, who knows where her head will end up. I'll wrap up the rest of the third soon enough, and I think more Japanese horror will be in my immediate future. Want to get away? Fly to beautiful Tokyo with Japan Airlines. Book now to get this fox arm, ordinarily at the cost of your sanity, absolutely free, before shipping and handling.